Hello everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to another God of War Ragnarok build guide. Now for today's build, we're going for an all ranged attack approach. So our entire gear set is based around doing range damage. And let me tell you, it's really powerful. Especially when it comes to regular enemy types, it can either one-shot or two-shot most enemies that you're going to encounter. This is a really strong build when it comes to your overall damage output. So let's go ahead and get right into everything that you're going to need. So today we're going with the full set of Hunter armor. We have the Hunter's Pauldron. It says holding L2 for several seconds grants a buff increasing all ranged attack damage for a short duration. And then we have the Hunter's Gauntlets, increases the damage of all Kratos' ranged attack and abilities. And then we have the Waist Armor, the Hunter's Belt, increases the damage of all of Kratos' ranged attack and abilities. And since those two are combined, it gives me a 20% damage increase. Now to find this armor, it's actually pretty tricky. There's actually a lot of steps you're going to have to complete. Now you're going to want to progress in the story far enough that when you're on Vanaheim, you're eventually going to get to the point where you unlock the crater, which is this whole additional really big section of the map with tons of stuff to do. And there's quite a few side missions and stuff you're going to have to accomplish to get this. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to find and kill a Soul Eater. There's a side quest up in this area where you're going to find some dead animals. Just find the dead bodies and then they will lead you to the Soul Eater. And then once you kill the Soul Eater, they will give you a little bit of resources that you're going to need to craft some of this gear. And then up next, you're going to want to find the Flame Phantom. And once you're up here exploring the crater, the Flame Phantom's pretty hard to miss. So you have to defeat the Flame Phantom, and that will give you some more resources. And then the final thing you have to do is kill the Untamed Fury. The crater is broken into 3 different chunks: the sinkholes, the plains, and the jungle. And the Untamed Fury is going to pop up in each of these locations once. So basically just explore and complete everything there is to do in the crater, and you will eventually find all of the locations of the Untamed Fury. And then the final location for her is located in the jungles, and you have to go to her den and finally kill her off. And then she will give you the final bit of resources you need to craft the full armor set. So next up, let's talk about the amulet and all the different attachments that I'm using. So first up, we have Midgard's Endurance. It comes with a set bonus that increases the damage of all Kratos' ranged attacks and abilities based on his cooldown. So as you can see, I have my cooldown at 361 and it's beyond fully maxed out. So I have a lot of points put into cooldown. And I just have a full set of these 3 going together so I get that set bonus. And then the next 3 I have come with a set bonus. Increases the damage of all of Kratos' weapon triangle attacks and abilities based on his cooldown. So these 3 are really important when it comes to using the triangle ability for the spear. And if our build is based completely off of ranged attacks, then we're going to be using the spear quite often. So this bonus damage to the triangle ability is going to come in real handy when we're using the spear. And then the final 3 enchantments that I put down here at the bottom are solely to increase my cooldown stats. As you can see, this one has a 20 cooldown, this one has a 12 cooldown, and this one also has a 12 cooldown. So I only picked these 3 enchantments just to get my cooldown up a lot higher so that I would do more damage with my ranged attacks. So up next, let's look at the skills. For the Leviathan Axe, for all of my ranged attacks, I switched all their mod tokens to damage output. Now I normally like to go with stun on all my attacks, but for this range build, I went with nothing but damage. So anytime I'm throwing my axe, I'm going to be doing more damage. And then I'm not really focusing on the Blades of Chaos at all in this build because the ranged attacks aren't really that good in comparison to the spear or the axe. You're very limited with the range on the blades, but I went ahead and made them damage anyway. And then for the spear, I also did the same. I made all of the ranged attacks focused on damage because this entire build is based off of doing the most damage as possible with all of my ranged abilities. So if you really want to take advantage of this build, make sure you go and level up all your skills so that you can activate the mod slots for them. Then up next, let's talk about the weapon attachments that I have. For the axe, I went with the Grip of the 9 Realms, which activating Glacial Permafrost while Permafrost is full will trigger a realm shift. Now, to be honest, the only reason I went with this is because it gives me a cooldown of 26, and all of my range attacks do more damage based off of cooldown. And then for the Blades of Chaos, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be using the blades that much in this build, so I just went with whatever handle I could find that would give me the most cooldown. So that ended up being the Radiant Warden handles. We're charging the triangle ability. It says incoming projectile attacks will be deflected. So if I'm sitting back at a range, a lot of my enemies are going to be trying to hit me with ranged attacks. So if I wanted to, I could switch to my blades and mash the triangle button and deflect a lot of those incoming projectiles. But the main reason I went with that is because of the cooldown stat. And then for the spear handle, this one is actually important to the build itself. It has a high cooldown, but most importantly, the stats are moderate luck chance to grant a health burst on any successful spear kill. So this is really important for this build because we're going to be sitting back and just constantly throwing spears at people, and any chance we can get to heal ourselves on kill is going to be really handy. And since this handle is crucial to the build, I'll show you where to get it. Now we have to go back to the crater to get this handle, and up in the crater, as you're exploring, you're going to come across these really big, beefy looking mini boss guys. There's like 3 or 4 of them scattered throughout the crater, and once you find and kill all of them, you will unlock this Hind of Deadly Vitality. So if you're going to want all the best gear pieces for this build, you're going to have to go and complete like 90% of everything up in the crater. And then none of the abilities really matter too much for the weapons, but I did go with the heavy runic attack, the artillery of the ancients for the spear, because my triangle ability does more damage. So when I use this artillery of the ancients, it throws spears all over the place, and then you can activate all those spears with the triangle button, and they will do more damage than normal thanks to my attachments. And then for the shield, I went with the Dauntless Shield because it gives me 26 points into cooldown. And then for the shield attachment, I went with the Rod of Expedition because it gives me a cooldown of 34. And it says it grants a blessing of cooldown when interrupting double blue ring attacks, tap L1 or parrying. So anytime an enemy is doing a double blue ring attack, I can counter that, and it will give me a bigger blessing of cooldown, which in return will make my ranged attacks do even more damage. And then for the Spartan Rage, it doesn't really matter too much, but since I'm sitting back at a distance and I'm not really getting up close and personal, I decided to go with Valor because it will recharge some of my health. But you could easily go with any of these alternatives because if somebody does get up in your face, you're not going to be doing as much weapon damage as you normally would because all your damage is based off of ranged attacks. So if someone does get up in your face, it would be pretty handy to have Fury equipped. But I just decided to go with Valor because based off of this build, I want to keep everyone away from me as far as possible. And for the Relic, I decided to go with the Glaive of Dodr, and yes, I'm well aware that I butcher like 90% of these names. And what this does is it basically makes you dodge backwards and you throw these little balls of Bifrost at your enemies. So I decided to go with this because it has a fast cooldown of 54 seconds based off of my cooldown stats. And the fact that I can use this every 54 seconds and it makes me dodge backwards to sort of get out of the way of enemies, I think this is really handy for this build. So that pretty much does it for everything I decided to go with for this build. This build is heavily based on cooldown, and because my cooldown is so high, not only am I doing more ranged attack damage, all of my runic abilities are recharging a lot faster than they normally would as well. So the ideal thing to do in this build is to keep enemies as far away from you as possible because all your attacks are based off of range damage. And then if anyone gets up close into your face, that is when you can activate your runic abilities and sort of get them away from you. So I mainly just use all of my weapon abilities in case somebody gets really up close into my face and I have no other option. But overall, this build is really good. It's one of my favorites to use so far. It's really fun to just sit back and use the spears or use the axe. I found that the axe is just as fun to use as the spear in this build because if you have this Frost Awaken 3 technique ability unlocked, what it does is holding triangle while recalling the axe, you will quickly activate Frost Awaken. So you can basically just create a non-stop loop of throwing the axe, recalling it, charging it up with Frost Awaken, and then throwing it again, and you can just do this over and over and over, and it does a ton of damage, and it's just really fun to do. So that is going to do it for my ranged build. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and consider hitting the subscribe button and hitting the bell for notifications. But that is going to do it for me, and I'm going to leave you guys with some gameplay of me using this build in the background. That way you guys can see just how good this build is for yourselves. And that is going to do it for me, guys, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.
Take the move!
Enemy behind you, Kratos!
Forward, brother!
Enemy to your left! Left side! Incoming fire! Enemy behind you, Kratos! Behind you! Hit the light orb!
Another Drogas to the left! That's frost in my neck stuff!
Too fast! Use your shield! Enemy behind you!
Behind you, watch out!
Got him!
Right flank!
The Alpha!
Behind you! In her yard! Left flank!
Bifrost behind you!